One introduction. Rosep view. The United States government was on track in the Biden administration to reduce the prices for both clean energy heat pumps and clean energy electric cars. Trump tariffs are expected to upset those plans to prevent future air pollution and prevent climate change. The United States government should, instead of certifying wood stoves as safe when they are not safe, go forward with regulations that ban wood stove use and direct government money for use of forest refuse only. For home building and furniture building, for just a few examples of use of forest products for non-burning uses, it is well known from scientific and medical research that wood burning is a substantial source of PM 2.5 emissions, yet the wood burning industry uses the scientifically debunked theory named carbon neutrality of wood burning to argue that wood burning replacing coal burning in industry and in a trickle-down argument that wood burning should continue for home heating should continue. Presumably because it is called renewable, wood may be renewable in the sense that a tree can be planted in the place of a cut-down burned tree, but it takes centuries or decades for the newly planted tree to attain the stature of the cut-down burned tree. During those centuries or decades, photosynthesis, which converts CO2 to oxygen and so sequesters some carbon, will not take place at the same rate as photosynthesis was performed previously, and wood burning emits both CO2 and PM 2.5, and PM 2.5 is not absorbed by trees, so PM 2.5 is not diminished by planting a tree in the place of a cut-down and burned tree. In fact, a living tree closes its pores against the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning, just as humans hold their breath in the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning. And when a tree closes its pores, the level of photosynthesis that absorbs CO2 pollution goes down. Wood burning emits 90% PM 2.5 particulate matter of 2.5 micrometer size, the perfect size to infiltrate the human lungs, setting off a cascade of human health problems and early deaths. Contrary to many beliefs, wood burning emits 2.8 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel coal burning, and wood burning emits 450 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel natural gas burning. Replacing coal burning with wood burning creates more air pollution in the form of CO2 and PM 2.5 than coal burning. This emission data comes from testing the cleanest burning wood stove in the United Kingdom, the eco-design wood stove, and international convention does not count the emissions from wood burning. The emissions from wood burning are erased from all countries around the world when calculating if each country has met its climate goals. This non-counting or erasure of wood burning emissions data from climate goals does not mean wood burning emissions do not exist. Rosep view. Purple air. PM 2.5 monitors hanging from the eaves of the house of a near neighbor should be used to measure the level of PM 2.5 in the air hyperlocally in the yards of near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners. If PM 2.5 levels exceed World Health Organization standards of 5 micrograms per cubic meter annually, then that evidence of air pollution from wood burning should lead to the shutdown of that indoor residential wood burning appliance, one appliance at a time if necessary.
Hi, my name is Lily. Andrew gave you the intro to Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates and their concern for air pollution from indoor residential wood burning. Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates, or ROSEP, would like every near neighbor of an indoor residential wood burner whose wood smoke enters their yards and sickens the near neighbors to have a purple air PM 2.5 monitor hanging from the eaves of their home to measure the level of PM 2.5 entering their yards. That measurement of air pollution should be used as evidence of unnecessary air pollution, and each indoor residential wood burner should be shut down based on that evidence, one indoor residential wood burner at a time if necessary. The presentation by Andrew ended at 2 minutes 5 seconds. The same presentation by Emma starts at 2 minutes 3 seconds before the end of this podcast. So I am Lily, your timekeeper, and you can start the next podcast at 2 minutes 5 seconds in if you would not like to see the presentation by Andrew a second time. This presentation by me, Lily, ends at 5 minutes in. What you will see in the main content of this ROSEP podcast will be news about air pollution from indoor residential wood burning and how that air pollution is being combated by ordinary people just like you who are unfortunately near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners at this time. There will also be news about unnecessary and highly polluting use of wood as fuel in industrial wood burners and preventable air pollution from wood burning wildfires. There will also be news about air pollution from PM 2.5 from gas-powered cars. There will also be news about airborne diseases which are also preventable with vaccines such as COVID-19 and measles and whooping cough, to name just a few. In 2025, Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates is also concerned with combating the Trump destruction of government funding for programs which protect human health through the Department of Health and Human Services, and Trump destruction of programs which fund the science and medical research plan to protect human health from preventable illnesses. Protecting human health is a patriotic act, and our defense against enemies is weakened if we are not as healthy as we can be. Heat pump rebates are now offered by the federal government, distributed through the eligible United States, are available in 2025 and are the best, cleanest, and now cheapest alternative to indoor residential wood burning if that burning is actually done to purportedly save money. Wind and solar as sources of the electricity that powers heat pumps and electric cars is also cheaper than burning, with the adverse health effects that are caused by indoor residential wood burning also come at a cost to near neighbors, both in shortening and ending their lives and in actual hospital, clinic, and funeral costs. Instead of being compensated monetarily, near neighbors should instead be able to achieve immediate relief by stopping indoor residential wood burning in their hyper-localized neighborhoods, which relief readings from purple air PM 2.5 monitors used as evidence of air pollution will help them achieve. Welcome to news about hopeful scientific and medical achievements that will also help us achieve the goal of clean air to breathe.
Episode 57 DHWH June 7, 2025 used in COVID shots cinema help rid the body of HIV. In episode 57 DHWH1 used in COVID shot cinema help rid the body of HIV. 2 in Georgia, Republicans vote to kill green jobs but face little fallout in Cedartown, Georgia. The plan of a solar recycling company to hire 200 people could be upended by Republicans in Congress. 3 floating solar panels. 4 Musk fighting Trump is good but they are both wrong on the big horrible bill. Kill the bill but not for the reason Musk says. 5 Wildfire smoke brings more hazardous air quality to Great Lakes and beyond. Parts of Canada are seeing some of their most unhealthy air yet, and the smoke is likely to move over the United States again this weekend. 6 documentary series goes inside the Trump bubble. Advanced episodes of Art of the Surge offer a rare behind-the-scenes look at the adulatory environment in which Trump has moved since regaining power. 7 The Palantir collection of disease data at CDC stirs privacy concerns. U.S. and state officials say the consolidation of the vast trove of information of the Public Health Agency could expose patients and will delay analysis of long-term trends. 8 Whooping cough is surging. Do you need another shot? Pertussis infections have surged in recent months and some people may need an additional shot for protection. 9 Trump approves expansion of scandal-hit coal mine. Environmental groups had opposed expanding a Montana mine previously caught up in allegations of cocaine trafficking and the faked kidnapping of an executive. 10 Supreme Court lets DOGE view Social Security data in a second order. The court ruled that for now DOGE does not have to hand over internal records to a government watchdog group as part of a lawsuit. 11 Republicans trying to control Indiana University meet little resistance as university leaders face political pressure around the country. 1 President in Indiana has acquiesced to many conservative plans. Main content. 1 Australian Melbourne used in COVID shot cinema help rid the body of HIV. A new study shows how the technology deployed in COVID vaccines helped scientists coax the virus out of hiding. Excerpts edited by Ross Epp for brevity and clarity and relationship to Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times June 6, 2025. The technology that powered COVID vaccines may also lead scientists to a cure for HIV. Using in Australian researchers said they were able to trick the virus to come out of hiding, a crucial step in ridding the body of it entirely. The research published last week in Nature Communications is still preliminary and so far has been shown to be successful only in a lab, but it suggests that NA has potential far beyond its use in vaccines as a means to deliver therapies against stubborn adversaries, short for messenger RNA. NA is a set of instructions for a gene. In the case of COVID vaccines, the instructions were for a piece of the coronavirus. In the new study they are for molecules key to targeting HIV. A doctor who is director of the Doherty Institute at the University of Melbourne who led the study called NA a miraculous tool to deliver things that you want into places that were not possible before. Vaccines deploying NA instruct the body to produce a fragment of the virus which then sets off the immune response of the body. In the United States the shots were initially hailed for turning back the pandemic, then viewed by some with suspicion and fear. Some officials including Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. have falsely said that they are highly dangerous and even deadly. Last week the Department of Health and Human Services sought to limit the availability of the vaccine to pregnant women, children and healthy younger adults. The administration also canceled a nearly $600 million contract with the drug maker Moderna to develop an NA shot for humans against bird flu. More on COVID-19 efforts to thwart NA therapies. The therapies, a key to COVID vaccines, hold great potential in treating several diseases, but some lawmakers want to ban them and the government is cutting funding. We asked experts about how the technology works, its safety and its potential in medicine. The doctor and her colleagues had for years experimented with other ways to activate HIV but had no luck in resting cells. Seeing the success of the COVID vaccines which used lipid nanoparticles, tiny spheres of fat containing NA, her team tested similar particles. They use the particles to deliver 2 different sets of molecules. TAT, which is adept at switching HIV on, and CRISPR, a tool that can edit genes. The researcher showed that in resting immune cells from people living with HIV, the approach coaxed the virus out of dormancy. It is very hard to deal with these cells, so I think this really targeting the right population of cells is what makes this paper special. It is unclear whether the new approach can successfully awaken all of the dormant HIV in the body and what side effects it might produce, and will almost certainly have some adverse effects, as every drug does, but we will investigate that systematically as we do for any new drug in this case, she said. Side effects may be more acceptable to people living with HIV than having to take medications for the rest of their lives. The researchers plan to test the method in HIV-infected animals next before moving into clinical trials. 2 in Georgia, Republicans vote to kill green jobs but face little fallout in Cedartown, Georgia. The plan of the solar recycling company to hire 1,200 people could be upended by Republicans in Congress, except cited by ROSEP for brevity and clarity and relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, June 7, 2025. Outside a shuttered yarn factory, thousands of old solar panels lie stacked on the gravel. Local leaders say they can't see the future here. 1,200 people recycling millions of those panels each year and making the glass to build new ones. A company, Solar Cycle, has already spent about $50 million of $500 million it plans to invest to turn the empty space into a recycling operation and build an adjacent glass manufacturing plant. Land has been purchased, permits have been secured, and hiring for jobs starting at $40,000 annually could be just months away. It is the kind of project that scientists say could ultimately reduce carbon emissions and that economists call a major step in bringing manufacturing back to the United States from China. Once operational, Solar Cycle would be the largest employer in the area, and yet the Trump Big Beautiful Bill has stopped the Solar Cycle factory in its tracks. The legislation, which passed the House and is now being debated in the Senate, would essentially eliminate the tax breaks that companies have been counting on to build new wind and solar projects, electric vehicle battery factories, and more. Republicans in the House voted to get rid of the clean energy subsidies in order to pay for the Trump income tax breaks for their even if it meant hurting investment in their districts. The Cedartown plant is on hold until the Senate decides the fate of the credits. Democrats built the clean energy tax credits into the 2022 Inflation Reduction Act, which they passed without any Republican votes. Since then, nearly 80% of the $843 billion in new electric vehicle factories, battery plants, and solar and wind projects has flowed to Republican-led districts, something Democrats believed would insulate the tax credits from politics. The Cedartown city manager said the promise of the Solar Cycle factory had lured other investments at the Solar Cycle offices. The chief operating officer recently received word that the plant in Odessa, Texas can now handle the recycling of 1 million aging and battered solar panels each year. The Cedartown factory, he said, will be able to process 10 million annually, or about 28,000 panels a day, and then in a circular process it will use the materials to make new solar glass, diverting the supply chain from China, which currently provides about 80% of the glass used in solar panels, rather than buy it from China. Let us go employ people from Cedartown and go make glass domestically, he said. He estimated that the company could start hiring in July, but for the uncertainty around the Republican tax bill, 3 floating solar panels in the Colorado River in the Phoenix, Arizona area. ROSEP view the canal awnings or canal canopies cool the water, and the solar panels themselves generate electricity, which puts less stress on lake and river dams to produce electricity themselves. Accepted by ROSEP for brevity and clarity and relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Inside Climate News, June 7, 2025. About 33 miles south of Phoenix, solar panels are serving as awnings to shade the gently flowing water from the unforgiving heat and wind of the Sonoran Desert. The panels began generating power last November for the Gila River Indian Community, or GRIC, on their reservation in south central Arizona, and they are the first of their kind in the U.S. The community is studying the effects of these panels on the water in the canal, hopeful that they will protect a precious resource from the sun and wind of the desert. In September, GRIC is planning to break ground on another experimental effort to conserve water while generating electricity, floating solar between its canal canopies and the new project that would float photovoltaic panels on a reservoir it is building. GRIC hopes to one day power all of its canal and irrigation operations with solar electricity, transforming itself into one of the most innovative and closely watched water users in the West. In the process, the investments of the community come at a critical time for the Colorado River, which supplies water to about 40 million people across 7 western states, Mexico and 30 tribes including Greek. Annual consumption from the river regularly exceeds its supply, and a decades-long drought fueled in part by climate change continues to leave water levels at Lake Powell and Lake Mead dangerously low. Covering water with solar panels is not a new idea, but for some it represents an elegant mitigation of water shortages in the West. Doing so could reduce evaporation, generate more carbon-free electricity, and require dams to run less frequently to produce power, but so far the technology has not been included in the ongoing Colorado River negotiations between the upper basin states of Colorado, New Mexico, Utah and Wyoming, the lower basin states of Arizona, California and Nevada. Tribes and Mexico. For Musk, fighting Trump is good, but they are both wrong on the big horrible bill. Kill the bill, but not for the reason Musk says. Rossep view from a Wisconsin State Democratic Party leadership point of view. The reason to kill the Trump bill, which cuts the safety net government programs for the average poor or average income voter to fund tax breaks for the rich, is to keep those tax cuts for the rich from happening and plunging the United States into further debt and insolvency and weakness. This Democratic leader suggests that voters adversely affected by potential cuts to their taxpayer-funded safety net call Republicans in Congress to voice their concerns. Melt the phones. Excerpt edited by Rossep for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization from the Wisdom's chair Ben Wickler, June 6, 2025. Trump vs. Musk is like watching two rubbery movie monsters fighting. The problem is it is real life, and the tiny people being squashed underfoot are not special effects. They are. Why is Musk attacking Trump over the giant horrible bill? Because it does not go far enough in his mind. He wants to cut health. Tens of thousands of deaths a year it would cost, jobs, shutter small businesses and transfer massive wealth from poor and working class Americans to the ultra rich. Here's the math in terms of percent change to income. If you want to understand where the money goes in terms of actual dollars rather than percentages, it is actually hard to fit the inequality on the screen. You have to make an animation. Thanks for reading. Subscribe for free to receive new posts and support my work. Pledge your support. This giant horrible bill is pure reverse Robin Hood. Steal from the poor and give to the rich, or you could call it pillaging. It is obscene. In the House, the bill passed by one vote. That means that every Republican who voted for the bill cast the deciding vote. All of this death, destruction and plunder is on them. Elon Musk, whose viciousness at DOGE has likely already caused hundreds of thousands of deaths, wishes the bill was even worse. Do not think for a second that he is now on the side of the angels. Musk is not alone. The Republican Senator from Wisconsin Ron Johnson has the same goal and has even said he understands the Musk frustrations. The Ron Johnson allies in the United States House of Representatives, Wisconsin Republican House Representatives Brian Steele and Tom Tiffany, have both said they support the Ron Johnson efforts, while Derek Van Orden wants to work with Ron Johnson on the legislation that can only mean one thing: they all support inflicting even more pain on Wisconsin. Even if the Musk reasons are wrong, he is right to call the bill a disgusting abomination. Thanks for reading. This post is public, so feel free to share it. Share by all means. Break out the popcorn as we watch Musk and Trump duke it out. Take pride in the fact that, as the Wall Street Journal just reminded readers, Wisconsin voters and volunteers and supporters of Susan Crawford helped make this happen. But then, as the popcorn digests, get your protest signs ready. Call your Republican members of Congress at 202-224-3121 and get ready to raise your voice again to save lives by killing this bill. Here is that number again: the Congressional Switchboard, 202-224-3121. Melt the phones. 5. Wildfire smoke brings more hazardous air quality to Great Lakes and beyond. Parts of Canada are seeing some of their most unhealthy air yet, and the smoke is likely to move over the United States again this weekend. Rossep view a bill in Congress would reclassify National Weather Service employees, making them harder to fire. Excerpts edited by Rossep for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, June 6, 2025. As dozens of wildfires continued to burn across Canada on Friday, the country sat under a thick blanket of wildfire smoke, with some of that acrid air drifting into the United States. There are over 200 wildfires burning across Canada with no end in sight. To the outbreak, air quality advisories and warnings have been issued across Canada from British Columbia to Newfoundland. Smoke gets easily carried by winds. This week it has drifted as far north as Newfoundland and as far south as Florida. There are some people who think this smoke could reach Europe, said an adjunct professor specializing in air quality at McGill University in Quebec. Winnipeg, the provincial capital of Manitoba, and Fort Smith, a small town in the Northwest Territories, reported the worst air quality in Canada on Friday morning, with levels in the very high risk range according to the Canadian government. Today is the worst day in Montreal of this week. Toronto has started to be very bad too. The worst of all is definitely Winnipeg due to its proximity to the fires in Manitoba. It is just a couple miles from the core of the fires. The impacts from smoke were less severe in the United States on Friday compared with previous days, especially in the Northeast, but a meteorologist with the Weather Prediction Center said more smoke was expected to push into the country this weekend. There is another batch that could come down Saturday night into Sunday in the United States. On Friday, the worst smoke impacts were over the Great Lakes, with the air quality in Detroit being very unhealthy, between 100 and 140. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency warns that wildfire smoke contains dangerous pollutants in the form of fine particles known as PM 2.5 that can penetrate deep into the lungs and enter the bloodstream. Short-term exposure can lead to bronchitis, worsen asthma, and create other health issues. Peak wildfire season in Canada usually begins in June, but this year is proving to be an especially active start, with fires growing large quickly. Definitely the start up is a steep and severe one. On Friday there were 212 wildfires burning across Canada, with most of those in British Columbia, Alberta, Manitoba, and Ontario, according to the Canadian Interagency Forest Fire Center. 6 documentary series goes inside the Trump bubble. Advanced episodes of Art of the Surge offer a rare behind-the-scenes look at the adulatory environment in which Trump has moved since regaining power. Excerpts edited by Ross Epp for brevity and clarity, and relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, June 6, 2025. A few weeks after winning the election, President-elect Trump found himself face-to-face with Governor Wes Moore of Maryland, a rising star in the Democratic Party, as the two men made their way through Northwest Stadium in Landover, Maryland to watch the annual Army-Navy game. The governor greeted him effusively. "President, welcome back to Maryland, sir. Welcome back to Maryland." Moore said, "Great to see you, great to see you, great to have you back here," Trump observed to Wes Moore. "You are a good-looking guy." Wes Moore added, "We are very, very anxious to be able to work closely with you." Then he mentioned the ongoing efforts to rebuild the Francis Scott Key Bridge outside Baltimore, which had collapsed that March. This chummy encounter was captured on camera for a documentary series called Art of the Surge, now streaming on Fox Nation, which provides a rare behind-the-scenes look at the adulatory environment in which Trump has moved since regaining power. The series gives a sense of how much he is enveloped by people eager to stroke his ego and get in his good graces, including some unexpected figures. Brian Grazer is a top Hollywood producer who produced Hillbilly Elegy, the movie based on the Vice President J.D. Vance memoir. In the documentary, Grazer is asked what made him want to vote for Trump. House Speaker Mike Johnson is quoted as saying, "The debt ceiling vote does not really matter. It is not even really a blockade on spending. It never has been." John Thune, the Senate Majority Leader, adds, "I have been approached by a few Democrats about getting rid of it, the debt ceiling." Trump nods along. A few days later, Trump would take a spending bill and demand that Republicans set it limit increase, throwing the negotiations into total chaos. The documentary series was made by a 42-year-old television producer who once worked as a producer for Tucker Carlson when he was a Fox News host. Trump comes across as more of a foul-mouthed, backslapping party boss with a pragmatic bent than is usually seen in television interviews. In one scene, Tulsi Gabbard is shown speaking to Trump as she would gets her hair and makeup done before what would be a bruising confirmation hearing. To be Director of National Intelligence Natalie Harp, the young aide known as the Human Printer, is in footage because she tails Trump with a portable printer so she can hand him information in hard copy as he prefers. There is film of Ivanka Trump hanging out with Elon Musk at Mar-a-Lago on election night when his partnership with Trump was still in early bloom. Scenes showing Trump and Musk bonding are particularly striking given their jarring breakup on Thursday. Trump seems in awe of what Musk has built as Musk shows Trump around a South Texas facility. 7 The Palantir collection of disease data at CDC stirs privacy concerns. U.S. and state officials say the consolidation of the vast trove of information of public health agency could expose expose patients and will delay analysis of long-term trends except edited by ROSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, June 6, 2025. The plans of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention to consolidate data on diseases like measles and polio are raising concerns about patient privacy, delays in spotting long-term trends, and ways the Trump administration may use the information. The agency told state officials earlier this week that it would shift disease information to a new system managed by Palantir, the data analysis and technology firm co-founded by Peter Thiel. News that the Trump administration has expanded the Palantir work across the federal government in recent months, allowing it to compile detailed information about Americans has introduced a new layer of anxiety and mistrust among state and local officials about sharing data with the CDC. The Palantir systems, including those at the CDC, rely on a platform called Foundry that could merge information from different agencies: the Department of Health and Human Services, the Food and Drug Administration, and the National Institutes of Health. All use Foundry. Labor and other advocacy groups have tried to block the Trump administration from sharing data across agencies. The revelations of possible misuse and abuse of these efforts are very concerning, said the director of Dallas County Health and Human Services. And Texas healthcare providers are required to report cases of certain diseases called nationally notifiable diseases to their local or state health departments. The list of notifiable diseases is long, from sexually transmitted diseases like syphilis to measles, tuberculosis, and polio. States can decide how much of the data to share with the CDC. The agency then provides the numbers updated weekly as well as finalized annual data in an email dated June 3, 2025. A CDC official told states and jurisdictions that the notifiable diseases surveillance system would migrate to the new One CDC data platform, or One CDP. That means the agency will have to postpone the release of annual data for 2024 until next year, along with the 2025 data. According to the email, health officials should still be able to review data about current outbreaks, but a clear picture of annual data is essential for identifying regions of concern, flaws in how outbreaks were handled, and planning future public health responses. Some experts said with multiple serious outbreaks occurring throughout the U.S., it is completely unacceptable to delay notable disease reporting, said the director of the Pandemic Center at Brown University. There is a huge need to move toward a more consolidated way of evaluating population health as well as individual health and risks, said a doctor who is the chief medical officer of Alaska. Until August, the agency has worked with Palantir systems since 2010, and this particular move has been discussed for at least a year. Still, the decision to transfer the data now was abrupt and took state officials and many CDC staff members by surprise. States are not required to share their data with the CDC, which has at times, including at crucial points during the pandemic, impeded the ability of the CDC to understand what was happening nationally. State officials sometimes have good reason to be hesitant. The data shared with the CDC is identified, meaning it does not include names and addresses, but it may include birth dates, ages, zip codes, and dates of hospitalization. In states with smaller populations like Alaska or Vermont, that information alone may be enough to reveal the identity of a patient. Some CDC officials said they were worried that local and state departments would stop sharing their data, especially as the administration has slashed the funds that the agency has typically sent to those partners. If states withhold crucial details, the national picture of infectious threats will be incomplete or even inaccurate unless federal agencies can provide credible assurances the data will be used appropriately and that privacy will be maintained. There will be no disease reporting in the US. 8 Whooping cough is surging. Do you need another shot? Pertussis infections have surged in recent months, and some people may need an additional shot for protection, except edited by ROSEP for brevity and clarity and relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, June 6, 2025. After a brief lull during the pandemic, whooping cough has bounced back, raising alarm among public health officials. There have been more than 10,000 whooping cough cases in the United States so far this year, an unusually high number even by pre-pandemic standards, said a vaccine expert at Vanderbilt University who has studied whooping cough, also called Pertussis, for decades. A branch of the World Health Organization (WHO) recently called on countries with high levels of spread, including the United States, to bolster surveillance of the illness and increase vaccination efforts. The doctor said the surge was most likely caused by a combination of falling childhood vaccination rates and a lack of exposure to the disease during the pandemic. Vaccine exposure reminds the immune system how to recognize and defend against the bacteria. While less deadly than other vaccine-preventable illnesses like measles and polio, whooping cough, sometimes called the 100-day cough, is not a mild illness. The respiratory illness is known for causing bouts of coughing so intense that they can lead to vomiting or even broken ribs. About a third of babies who get whooping cough need treatment at a hospital. Last year 10 people died from the infection, and most of them were younger than a year old. These cough seizures can be so profound that you can lose consciousness and fall, said an infectious disease specialist at Vanderbilt University Medical Center who should get a shot and when. The initial series of vaccines for pertussis, which also targets tetanus and diphtheria, is typically given during childhood, and doctors generally recommend booster shots for adults every 10 years. This is because while the current vaccine offers excellent short-term immunity against whooping cough, protection drops considerably after just a few years. If you are unsure about when you were last vaccinated, the doctor said there is no harm in getting an extra shot within the 10-year window other than a sore arm. Local public health officials may advise a booster shot for anyone living near active outbreak. States on the West Coast, including Washington, Oregon, and California, have reported the most cases this year, according to the latest data available from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and medical experts say there are other groups who may want to consider more frequent shots. If you have a young child in your life, whooping cough, while unpleasant for adults, can be devastating. For a child under a year old, of the 5 people who died from the infection this year, 4 were under 1-year-old. Unvaccinated children are 13 times as likely to become infected as their fully vaccinated peers and more likely to suffer severe outcomes. If you are planning to visit a child younger than 6 months old and especially under 2 months old, experts recommend checking whether you have had a Tdap shot within the last 5 years. If not, or if you are unsure, you should get a Tdap booster at least 2 weeks before interacting with the baby. For a child 11 years old, most of the immunity from childhood shots has worn off. At the same time, children are still spending most of their days in school where the bacteria spread readily. This year, more than a third of whooping cough cases have been among people 11 to 19 years old. For this reason, the CDC recommends that children get a booster shot at 11 or 12 years old. While this age group is unlikely to have fatal complications, the cough often disrupts normal activities like sleeping, eating, and studying, and can linger for months after the initial infection. 9 Montana Trump approves expansion of scandal-hit coal mine. Environmental groups had opposed expanding a Montana mine previously caught up in allegations of cocaine trafficking and the faked kidnapping of an executive, subsetted by ROSEP for brevity and clarity and relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, June 6, 2025. The Trump administration on Friday greenlighted the expansion of a scandal-hit underground coal mine in Montana, one of the largest in the nation, cutting short a federal environmental review and putting into action a key element of the Trump plan to revive the American coal industry. The Trump decision would extend the life of the Bull Mountain coal mine, which employs 250 people outside Billings, by 9 years. The Interior Department said it would allow the operator of the mine, Signal Peak Energy, to mine nearly 60 million tons of coal, mostly for export to Asia. This is what energy leadership looks like, Doug Burgum, the Interior Secretary, said in a statement. A federal judge in 2024 dismissed the request of the mine to force a speedier review of its expansion, which involves federal coal leases. The Interior Department had earlier said it would complete its environmental review by May 2026. On Friday, the Trump administration curtailed that review and gave the mine expansion the go-ahead. Trump has signed executive orders aimed at expanding coal mining in the United States, including prioritizing coal mining on federal land. 10 Supreme Court lets DOGE view Social Security data in a second order. The court ruled that for now DOGE does not have to hand over internal records to a government watchdog group as part of a lawsuit, cited by ROSEP for brevity and clarity and relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, June 6, 2025. The Supreme Court on Friday let members of the Department of Government Efficiency, formed by Elon Musk, have access to sensitive records of the Social Security Administration. The court order was brief and unsigned, which is typical when the justices rule on emergency applications. The Trump administration said it needed the data to root out waste and fraud and to modernize the operations of the Social Security Administration. Two labor unions and an advocacy group represented by Democracy Forward Foundation sued sued to block access, saying that much of the information was deeply personal and protected by privacy laws. The court responded that the agency may proceed to give DOGE access to the records necessary to do its work in a second unsigned order. On Friday, the court handed DOGE a second victory, ruling that for now the organization does not have to turn over internal records to a government watchdog group as part of a public records lawsuit. The three liberal members of the Supreme Court, Justices Sonia Sotomayor, Elena Kagan and Ketanji Brown Jackson, dissented from both rulings, although Musk left Washington at the end of May after declining influence and increasing friction with both President Trump and shareholders of his own private companies. The two cases are a reminder of what he left behind for the first few months of the Trump administration. Musk and his team swept through federal agencies, firing federal workers and leaving a flurry of lawsuits in their wake. The Musk time in the government, however, failed to deliver on his promised $1 trillion in cuts to the federal budget. The Musk departure from Washington also signaled the souring of his relationship, at least for the time being, with President Trump, which spilled into the public eye in spectacular fashion in a series of social media posts. On Thursday, 11 Republicans trying to control Indiana University meet little resistance as university leaders face political pressure. Around the country, one president in Indiana has acquiesced to many conservative plans, except edited by RLSEP for brevity and clarity, and relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, June 5, 2025. The sweeping changes to the public universities of Indiana came suddenly this spring with little time for debate. Republicans passed a new law that would require university boards to measure the productivity of tenured faculty. The faculty were downgraded to advisory only roles in university decision-making. Degree programs that graduated too few students would be closed, and at Indiana University, whose flagship campus in Bloomington is ranked among the top 100 schools in the nation, the Indiana governor was given new power over the governing board of the school. The moves aligned with a conservative playbook to reduce faculty power on campuses perceived by many on the right as bastions of liberal thought. There is this shifting mentality that the state is the owner of these institutions. It is not the students, it is not the alumni, said a doctoral student at the University of Wisconsin-Madison who studies public university boards.
Cat's corner strategy with Tiger and Leone. Saying the quiet part out loud. Roar. Hi, I am Tiger. Our human asked us to get up from our naps and start Cat's Corner strategy with Tiger and Leone. She gave us a list of internet allies, which we will post for her here.
Hi, I am Leone. It is better for your mental fitness to go to these websites than to go to bro sites for advice. Substack letters from an American Heather Cox Richardson. Substack your local epidemiologist. The Midas Touch. The Guardian. The New York Times.
One introduction. Rosette view. The United States government was on track in the Biden administration to reduce the prices for both clean energy heat pumps and clean energy electric cars. Trump tariffs are expected to upset those plans to prevent future air pollution and prevent climate change. The United States government should, instead of certifying wood stoves as safe when they are not safe, go forward with regulations that ban wood stove use and direct government money for use of forest refuse only for home building and furniture building. For just a few examples of use of forest products for non-burning uses, it is well known from scientific and medical research that wood burning is a substantial source of PM 2.5 emissions, yet the wood burning industry uses the scientifically debunked theory named carbon neutrality of wood burning to argue that wood burning replacing coal burning in industry, and in a trickle-down argument that wood burning should continue for home heating should continue. Presumably because it is called renewable, wood may be renewable in the sense that a tree can be planted in the place of a cut-down burned tree. But it takes centuries or decades for the newly planted tree to attain the stature of the cut-down burned tree. During those centuries or decades, photosynthesis, which converts CO2 to oxygen, and so sequesters some carbon, will not take place at the same rate as photosynthesis was performed previously, and wood burning emits both CO2 and PM 2.5, and PM 2.5 is not absorbed by trees, so PM 2.5 is not diminished by planting a tree in the place of a cut-down and burned tree. In fact, a living tree closes its pores against the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning, just as humans hold their breath in the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning. And when a tree closes its pores, the level of photosynthesis that absorbs CO2 pollution goes down. Wood burning emits 90% PM 2.5 particulate matter of 2.5 micrometer size, the perfect size to infiltrate the human lung, setting off a cascade of human health problems and early deaths. Contrary to many beliefs, wood burning emits 2.8 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel coal burning, and wood burning emits 450 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel natural gas burning. Replacing coal burning with wood burning creates more air pollution in the form of CO2 and PM 2.5 than coal burning. This emission data comes from testing the cleanest burning wood stove in the United Kingdom. The Eco-Design Wood Stoven International Convention does not count the emissions from wood burning. The emissions from wood burning are erased from all countries around the world when calculating if each country has met its climate goals. This non-counting or erasure of wood burning emissions data from climate goals does not mean wood burning emissions do not exist. ROSEPView Purple Air PM 2.5 monitors hanging from the eaves of the house of a near neighbor should be used to measure the level of PM 2.5 in the air hyperlocally in the yards of near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners. If PM 2.5 levels exceed World Health Organization standards of 5 micrograms per cubic meter annually, then that evidence of air pollution from wood burning should lead to the shutdown of that indoor residential wood burning appliance, one appliance at a time if necessary.